All right.
Back on the mic.
We're on the
mic.
On the mic.
Turn on the mic. We messed
Turn
up.
it on.
So, yeah. Anyway, all right. So today we're gonna go over climate and Brazil and the midterms and possibly any review from last time. Does anyone remember anything they wanted to say from last time that they didn't say?
No, not really.
Yeah.
We were critiquing political figures, and we did talk about.
Yeah, we'll have more to talk about, like Jordan
Definitely.
Peterson.
Yeah.
But we'll do lots of that.
Yeah.
So.
I wanted to say one more thing about guns is that I think we need to emphasize training a lot more than we do. And like one of the statistics about accidents, that just should never happen. There's no reason that accidents need to happen if you're trained well. And the idea too, that one of the ideas that bugs me around guns is having guns in your house endangering your children, and how people lock up their guns and keep them away from their children. Like, that's a good idea, obviously, especially when they're really young. But I think it needs to be paired with gun safety training so that the kid... Because if you have weapons in your house of any kind, eventually the kid's going to come into contact with them, and they need to know how to deal with them. Honestly, I think it would be a good idea to have that in schools, where you just have, like, when you're in elementary school, they just kind of go over rudimentary gun safety in case you ever come across one, just to make sure that it gets done.
Yeah, I like that idea.
See,
systems.
I bet critics would say, "Oh, well, you're going to train the shooters to be better at it."
But this would literally just be safety. It's like if you encounter a gun, like these are the safe things that you need to know.
It's not like target practice or
not even.
Here's how you reload quickly.
if it stays pure safety, I think that would be okay. But I worry that wouldn't happen. I worry that would be way too easy for gun companies to be able to like work their way into schools and do stuff.
That'd be super easy to do. Just have the sheriff come.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to do it.
Yeah,
if you just have local law enforcement.
Oh, are we talking about like literally like a guy comes like once a year maybe?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just comes to school.
Yeah, it wouldn't need to be like a class that you do.
Okay.
I mean, it takes a reasonable person 10 minutes to learn gun safety.
So. See, I wish there was not to go off topic already, but there's so many things I wish we taught in school that had to do with just like sustainable real life skills. Like, I mean, everyone should know how to, hunt and fish and fucking grow their own crops and
that'd be cool.
Fix a car, and we don't learn any of that.
Honestly, I go even more basic than that, and I think we should learn how like coping mechanisms is a big one that I think that we just completely ignore. Like, learning.
Yeah, we don't do much emotional education.
Nothing.
Yeah.
We expect the children to get that all from their parents. And then you're putting
parents are usually pretty bad.
Exactly. You're putting people in a situation where they're bound to repeat whatever their parents have.
Yeah,
right?
They were never taught.
Yeah. So why would it be good? Unless they went out and learned it themselves, they have no chance. Yeah. And so I think those kinds of things where it's like, if you don't get it from your parents, you're kind of fucked. We need to fix that. Like, there's no reason that we should just expect all parents to be good at that. Because clearly they're not.
No.
There's tons of adults that don't know anything about that.
Well, I think maybe we should talk about that, like this kind of topic another time, only because I think it totally deserves its own time. But it's like, what is it that a school even symbolizes? Because I don't think people really even know that. Because like right now, it's much focused towards like markets.
Yeah,
you're being trained for jobs, and that's literally it.
Yeah,
so we could definitely do a whole podcast on just the education system.
But that's the funny thing is, it's not even a well done school for a market if that's what it's structured for. Because that means then the companies need to almost own it, tell exactly what you need to teach these kids so that we can hire them into our fields.
Yeah.
But they don't.
Well, really,
they're trying to.
What it is, though, it's not even that. It's not even preparing kids for being good employees. It's just testing, right? You're just showing off that you can follow instructions, you can get assignments done on time.
Well, in a sense, that is making you a good employee. It's just making like easily moldable, subservient people.
All I'm saying though is it's not really for what they're going to be doing specifically.
Exactly. It's just to make them like a blank slate that'll be good, malleable Play-Doh.
Yeah, that cartoon of like the teacher going to each student cutting like little bubble like over their head. Have you seen that?
No.
Cutting it to a square and like all the
no matter what it is,
different shapes and sizes.
That's amazing.
It gets to me every time. I'm just like,
I'm glad I was such a fucking rebel in school.
I
I hate authority. I'm such an
Yeah.
anti-authority person.
Me too. I think one of the things that really helped me was coming into school with already knowing a good amount about some things, you know? And so then when we got to some of those subjects, I was like, wait, like, you didn't explain that. Like, I remember it. Or, like, that's a shitty representation of that. Or that actually is wrong. And I had that very early on. So I was
then
like,
you
wait,
get
these people don't know
attitude.
shit.
Yeah.
These people don't know anything. These are just random people. And I know people that are smarter than them. And I've learned a lot from them already. It's like...
That happened to me too really early on, primarily just with history. When I learned about ancient Greece, I was like, you don't know much at all. Like, this textbook's really simplistic.
Yeah, when I remember distinctly being in high school history class, and we were learning about World War II or something like that, and they mentioned something about the guns in World War II. And my dad was a gunsmith, and so I've learned a shit ton about guns from him. And they just glossed over something and completely fucked it up. And I was like, raising my hand, you fucked that up. Like, let me explain it better. And I explained it to the whole class, and the teacher was like, oh, okay, I didn't know that. And it's just such a good example of how they don't. They're flying by the seat of their pants a lot of the time.
Yeah,
they don't know what
I mean,
they're talking
it's
about.
hard because like a lot of times, especially in public schools, a history teacher in particular is not really going to be put in charge of the time periods they've specialized in.
Yeah.
Teachers a lot of times are put in, a classroom to teach something just because they didn't have a teacher for it, and it's not like their specialty.
Yeah.
Dude, I had an English teacher for science in the 8th grade.
So yeah,
And she didn't know anything.
I'd be a horrible
She didn't know
science teacher.
Anything, and it was really bad. She would say something in class, and then she would look at me to see if it was right. Because like sometimes she would say stuff, and I'd be like, "That's wrong. Like you got this wrong," and explain how it was wrong. And so she started like asking me sometimes if things were right, and I was just like, "Dude, I'm in fucking 8th grade. You're supposed to be helping me."
I mean, I guess the best way to manage that, I think it's good if teachers kind of give you disclaimers. Like, look, here's my areas where I know a ton.
Yeah.
Here's the areas where, like, if you guys know things, let's have a discussion.
Totally. Yeah.
At the very least, that should happen.
Yeah. Definitely.
Obviously, it'd be ideal if people knew what the fuck they were talking about.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But again, another really good example of different kinds of education is, I know in different European countries, they have, like, a more non-linear style where, a classroom has multiple teachers, and it doesn't stay on one topic. The conversation moves organically, and different teachers chime in with their expertise, and the conversation just kind of flows more naturally.
That sounds really
I mean, if you think about it, it's like the lowest denominator would be if no one read anything, and then you had to teach what the thing was that you were supposed to have read the day before, right? Because that's like... The idea of, like, learning is going to be you need to know some information.
Yeah.
And then the idea of being in a classroom full of people is to discuss that. Otherwise, go home, look it up on the internet, read some books, you'll learn there.
Yeah.
The people are around you so that you can have a discussion. So for me, it's like one of the most important characteristics a teacher can have is someone who can really create discussion.
Definitely.
Who knows how to, like, conduct that, in a good way.
Definitely.
Well, that's what we didn't have in school. Like, I think, like, the last year, senior year, we had, like, the economics class. Debate and stuff.
Yeah, Homan
But
is
other
great.
than that, like, there was no debate. It was just a PowerPoint and
I
write down notes.
I started to really shine senior year too in government with I think it was Homan too. Yeah, he was just a good teacher.
Yeah, he was.
I know we do this really cool exercise where he'd split the class in half.
Nice.
Based off of, like, he'd have a position, and you would pick what side you held that position on, and then you'd take turns going across the room to argue, and you'd watch people move from one side to the other based off the arguments that were happening.
So cool.
It was really, really neat.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, and I really like that idea too, because I think one of the problems that we have with debate in our country is that it's very much, I'm right, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Let me convince you. It's not, let's get to the bottom of this. Let's
Yeah.
figure out what the right answer really is. And that's a much healthier way of going about it.
There's some new research in how to teach history effectively. I saw a study coming from Harvard on this new technique where what they'll do is when they teach you about something that happened historically, they'll first teach you all the context around it, and then have the class argue it out and come to their own conclusions before they tell you what actually happened. And so then,
cool.
as you're learning history, you're kind of like getting that contextual opinion, and it's not just like this static thing. You're like, well, I don't agree how things went that way. And now you're seeing, well, then that connected to this and that connected to that, and it's just much more, I don't know, much better.
Yeah. Well, it's also really interesting, too, because if that's properly framed, and then they decide the thing that actually happened,
Yeah.
then they get to see where that might have gone wrong.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
then what happened because of that, and then they'll rethink about their own arguments.
Totally.
So it's really
Well, it's just actually engaging to the mind versus just remembering
Yeah,
like,
it's not-
dates and
yeah.
facts
Yeah.
and
memorization is utter horseshit.
No, and it's stupid, too, because especially now, we have the internet at our fingertips all the time. So knowing facts is not very useful.
Well, yeah, and most people just go, well, I don't need to. I can just look it up if I need to know.
Exactly, and they're totally
okay.
right.
I'm not gonna. Though I will the way that
Not
we
that it's bad to know things.
No, and
but-
there's obviously you need to know, you need to have context for things, and
Right.
you need to have, knowledge of how thoughts have already, or just how things have worked out already to a certain degree, and it's not to say that you shouldn't know anything.
Well, no, it just
But-
makes it way more. It makes the conversation a lot more nuanced if you can say this is literally the data, and
Yeah.
then people are like, "Oh, that's the data."
Totally.
Yeah, let me not waste your time where you're trying to convince
See, but
me because I can make the deduction from there.
Data, I mean, it's going to get different between like social sciences or history and hard sciences, but
Yeah.
like it's a lot different when it's like you're being tested. Like, oh well, what year did President Monroe pass the Monroe Doctrine? It's
Yeah.
like, well, I know generally what time this happened.
Yeah, that's
and I know what it was.
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't need to know the dates or when he was born or
Yeah.
when
Well,
this
unless you're
happened
for some
exactly.
reason talking about like literally the year before and the year after.
Right.
But
You
I
know?
think the point here, though, is not that we shouldn't teach any facts. It's that it should be much more organized around how to think and how
Yeah.
to converse and argue and ways of, like styles of thinking and ways to check thoughts.
It should
and
be more
information.
substantive and conceptual as
Yes.
opposed to technical.
Exactly.
Well, here's like the cutest thing for me is like having taken like cognitive science classes. It's like I think it's
I think you're cute. Drew.
well, I think it's cute that
Especially in that sweater. Oh my god.
I know, right? I think it's cute that people worry about facts, like that professor, that our education system's even centering on facts, because I'm like, guys, you learn in context. The best way to learn something is literally like, if you want to know that the liver does a certain function, you have to be able to know why your body even needs that function to be
Right.
occurring.
Yeah. Right.
What is it connected to? What is all of this too? But you don't it's like you will know the fact because of its function,
Yeah.
not because you just not by going from the fact to the function.
Right.
that's why I really did not like school, or I struggled because my brain, unless I can see where it's useful,
Yeah,
I
you just kind of
don't take it in.
We
Almost
know
every-
that
goes-
that's
everybody has
the
that
brain
problem.
doesn't do the brain's
Then
not like
why don't we change the school system?
Because- well
Because
a
you're
lot
trying
of
to
the
make
s-
people who are capable of following directions that are important to them, because that's what our work is.
okay, that is one side of it, but the other side is a lot of the science hasn't been like super recent.
Yes,
So
that is. I think there's a lot of the power of the status quo.
It takes time
Yeah,
to catch up to
yeah.
the.
But it's just that's how it was, and it used to be more important that people knew things, right? Because you couldn't just look it up. You had to go to a fucking library and sift through, thousands of books or a giant ass encyclopedia just to get one little snippet of it. As opposed to now, I could type something into my computer and it'll shit out 100,000 answers to whatever I want.
Also-
so it's changed now. The information scape is
in the amount of time in which we want to function in too, because like you could also be like the first thing that came to my mind was like doing some organic chemistry reaction. It's like if you really wanted to back in the day, go to a book, look at like the thing that you want to make, and then make it step by step from that. But it's like if you need to do that for the market the next day, you better know that shit and how it works so that you don't need to go to the book.
right.
You just do it right then and there, and you can get it done as quickly as possible because some other guy might think of the same idea and patent it.
Definitely.
But
And there's also, it's important too that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because scaffolding is a huge concept that's very important. Like you have to have a certain amount of requisite information to understand more information going forward.
Yeah.
So it's not that the whole concept is broken. It's just that it's become hyper focused on one aspect, and it completely forgets about the idea, like teaching people how to think. And I think that's a fundamentally more useful aspect too, because if you teach people how to think and how to learn and how to, converse and all these other things like that, then it's much easier for them to go out in the world and learn facts than it is if you teach them facts and then they have to learn all the other shit.
Yeah. See, I think part of it too is like this kind of like, like meritocracy gone awry, because I know one of the arguments is that, well, we need to do all this testing so that we know which schools are performing, so they can be rewarded based off their performance. And it's like, well, the irony is, overall now, your performance is shit compared to other countries. Right. So you're missing it. You're missing it somewhere.
Well, I think that is they're testing the wrong things.
Yeah.
I don't like the testing, the way we test, too, like the multiple choice.
No.
It's like, just my last thing of college, I was doing, like, some of the multiple question ones, and the way they word them, they're purposely trying to trick you.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, now you're just like, you're playing mind games with me instead of,
the way you structure the sentence, and then the four is just like, you're playing a game versus like, you're not actually wondering if I know this.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating also because if you know that there's a test at the end of your class, then you're going to be thinking about it differently than if there wasn't, right? And so I've been in a lot of situations where the subject matter was interesting to me, but I hated it because I had to be so strict. I had to be like, oh, better write that down, better memorize that little thing, better make sure I know all this. Whereas if I had just relaxed and thought about it, I would have learned probably more, and I would have enjoyed it a lot more.
So I think we need to get rid of tests.
Well, I think they need to be restructured at least.
Some of the best education systems, like Finland and stuff, they don't even have homework.
Nice.
So, awesome. That's like so radically different than how we teach.
Yeah, I think if it was debates and more interactive during the class and not like just slideshows and remembering facts.
They've done studies that show that homework doesn't increase student performance, right? Like the things at home that increase student performance are like, especially when you're young, reading with your kids, having music, playing music in particular, and there's a number of other ones that
playtime's huge too.
Playtime's huge.
Creativity,
huge. Yeah.
Just free creative expression.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
That's so vital to human nature. Anyway,
way off topic.
Yeah.
No, that's okay. That was a good topic.
We could get into that more later too.